You're listening to Trek FM.
Hello and welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM's 50th anniversary rewatch project in which we cover all 729 episodes and films of the Star Trek franchise. I'm Duncan Barrett and joining me today is...
Santa Claus! Ho, ho, ho.
Oh, it's lovely to have you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you. And the same to all our listeners. Now, Santa, would you like to tell us what episodes we're looking at today?
Well, Duncan, you've been a good boy this year, so we're going to talk... Actually, you've been a bad boy, so we have to talk about Workforce Part 2.
Wow, I must have been pretty bad. That is serious punishment. Yeah.
So, Workforce 2, Chakotay and B'Elanna and everybody saves the day and everybody gets their memory back. The end.
We'll leave it at that, shall we? I think, we mentioned yesterday, I think we both said we enjoy the first part of this two-parter more than the second part. I guess it's really once you get bogged down in the second part, you really start thinking, why on earth have they stretched this out to 2 episodes? I remember, this is going back a little while, but I was interested hearing the From There to Here episode on Dragon's Teeth, that apparently was originally going to be a 2-parter. And that seemed like a story where you could see that could be expanded. There was a lot of potential there. There was a lot of sort of intrigue that could easily be teased out. This story to me is just like, if it was a single episode, it would be a pretty forgettable one. I have no idea what they were thinking trying to stretch this out. It's, and it just gets worse and worse in this part 2, frankly. I guess this story with Janeway and this kind of romance for her, maybe we're meant to feel... something really bittersweet and powerful and difficult for her, and that, oh, if only she could just settle down and so on. But the problem is, I don't really buy that. I mean, they have had opportunities to settle down before. Chakotay suggested they settled down back in Resolutions. She didn't want to. She wants to keep going. She wants to get the crew home. I know she doesn't know who she is in this situation, but I feel like there's this slight suggestion, because she makes this... these various comments towards the end. There's this suggestion she could have more responsibility. She's like, oh no, I like my job, I don't want to have responsibility. It's like she doesn't want to be the captain, she doesn't want to have this job, she doesn't want to do all this. And I suppose it's something we've seen in Star Trek before. You kind of, it's a slight similarity with, say, the Nexus in Generations, or any of those episodes where someone is given a kind of, even going back to The Cage, I suppose, a pleasant, nice, happy existence, as opposed to their, sort of fulfilling their destiny. But it's not even that. I mean, at least Kirk's fantasy was quite, that looked quite a nice place to retire. She's just, she's met some guy and she's living in this grimy city working this boring job. It doesn't, I don't get it. Unless she's just really, really lonely, she could do better. She's, there's at least one person sitting on her bridge she could have a more interesting time with if she's that desperate for romance.
Who's that, Tom Paris?
Oh yeah, definitely. Or Harry Kim.
I am not a Janeway and Chakotay shipper at all. So
really?
No, not at all. And I think that boat sailed a long time ago, and myself. So I do like how it turned out in the novels. I'm okay with that, right? So, but I'm just saying, as far as the show goes itself, I think there's just too many instances, and I'm not a Troy and Riker shipper, right? Like, like I don't know. Like for me, like relationships can pass, and I don't know. I work in an office. There's a bunch of women there. I'm not sleeping with any of them. Like there's no relationships at my office. Why does every single show have to have some relationship that people cheer for? That I don't know. Like I don't buy it. I don't buy Picard and Crusher at all. Maybe that's just me and just how I want to watch show. I honestly didn't like Mulder and Scully when they finally got together on the X-Files, right? So why can't people just work? I don't know. I don't know. That's just my opinion, though. So to me, watching this, and Janeway's like ready to move in with this guy, and I don't know. So part of me is like, this is why Janeway and Chakotay wouldn't work for me. I don't know, because she can fall in love. Chakotay fell in love
after 3
with
weeks. She moves in with him after 3 weeks, I think. I mean, it's she's not wasting any time, is she?
No, because that's right, because she loves this guy. But what about Chakotay in that unforgettable episode, that really forgettable episode, Unforgettable?
Yeah.
Like, he fell in love with somebody, right? Like, everybody falls in love with somebody else, and it's like, but they still, I don't know, I just don't buy it. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we should mention, because we didn't mention it yesterday, Don Most is in this episode, right, from Happy Days.
Right, okay, yeah.
He's the main antagonist, but I don't know, other than me completely upsetting Suzanne from To the Journey right now by saying that I don't care about Jen and Chakotay, then that's about... I've accomplished all I need to accomplish in this episode.
Yeah.
Sorry, Suzanne.
Oh well. One of the things I did like about this episode, one of a fairly small number of things, was, although it's a bit silly, the stuff with B'Elanna back on the ship. I thought that was quite touching. She's lost her memories. She's trying to sort of remember who she is. She's trying to understand who Tom is. I know you don't buy their relationship either, but I at least thought that Roxanne Dawson, gave that a kind of emotional weight, and she directed the episode as well. A bit of a poison chalice for her, I think. I read an interview. She said she'd done riddles before. She'd done one previous episode, and Rick Berman came up to her and said, "I'm going to give you another chance to fail." Which, if that's what his intention was, he certainly gave her the right episode. But, I don't really think we can blame her for what's wrong with this episode. I think it was just the script wasn't there, really.
I agree. I will mention as well that on an upcoming episode of Warp 5, I made an error. And I was talking about Larry Drake, the actor, and I got my titles of Voyagers confused, and I said, so Greg Mullenby is like, how do you guys feel about Workforce? And I'm like, for the Journey cast, and I'm like, I just talked about Workforce on an upcoming Warp 5, because we were talking about Larry Drake. But Larry Drake, it was actually the other two-parter from Season 7 that I was thinking about, the one where they kidnapped the Doctor.
Right.
Which
Flesh and
I
Blood.
still can't remember the name.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. With the holograms.
Right, so I had my names confused. So Larry Drake is not in this one; he's in Flesh and Blood.
Right.
Anywho,
one thing that struck me just talking about holograms in this episode was, I mentioned yesterday I had this kind of reservation with the Doctor that they're making him as a character too. He's becoming a bit datafied. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's capable of doing everything. He's becoming a bit of a sort of Superman. There is one line that I thought was quite interesting in this episode, but I don't even know if it was intentional, which is where the Doctor is basically saying he doesn't want to go back to being a doctor. Now he's had this taste of command. He wants to, I suppose, captain a starship. And Harry Kim says to him something along the lines of, well, don't worry, once you go back into your original matrix, or however it is it works, you'll be perfectly happy being a doctor. And there's something slightly chilling about that, given that the whole story is about these people who've been brainwashed into thinking that they're happy doing this absolutely tedious job, as far as we can see, that is way beneath them, beneath their abilities, and that essentially that is kind of exactly what they're planning to do with the Doctor, if you take that seriously. On the other hand, I don't feel that I don't know that it was intentional. I don't know that it goes anywhere, but that was just one little sort of, in this rather boring story, one little niggling thing that caught my attention, I suppose, at least.
Because you mentioned that, I just had an amazing fan theory. What if the Doctor's program has now turned into a virus and it's slowly eating the Voyager computer? Because as he gets like a little bit more, he's growing and expanding. And if they'd taken any longer to get home, the Doctor would have just turned into hell.
Yeah. Well, frankly, given this kind of stuff that's gone on before when he tries to, meddle with his program, I mean, we had Darkling, didn't we? I'm sure we've had other episodes where, things, have gone badly wrong as a result. It's quite a bold step to try this command hologram idea at all. It's they're taking a risk, really.
Yeah, I am the command
I guess you
hologram.
see that in the is it Renaissance Man, the penultimate episode of Voyager, where he is, impersonating people and, kind of, I know he's got good intentions, but essentially exactly that kind of data thing. He's too powerful. He can pull the wool over anyone's eyes by that point.
Activate the ECH. Computer, change all the command codes and deactivate all the oxygen on the ship.
Yeah.
Anywho. Should we move on to human error? I can't believe we just talked about Workforce Part 2 for like 9 minutes.
Well, there you go. Just actually, one other thing that struck me. Did you notice the last line of this episode?
I did not.
is Janeway gives a command and Paris replies, "Aye, sir." So I don't know if that, again, I don't know if that was deliberate. Is that a kind of suggestion that, you know, because they're still gradually reintegrating their memories, like his memory seems to have gone way back to, you know, before Caretaker, basically, that he's going to start calling her Sir again. Anyway, who knows? It was off screen, but but there you go. Okay, well, let's move on to Human Error. So this is the episode in which 7 of 9 decides to try her hand at romance on the holodeck with a holographic version of Commander Chakotay. I suppose it's a kind of, you know, we've sort of seen this before in some ways with Hollow Pursuits and so on, and we've seen Seven developing her kind of dating skills in Someone to Watch Over Me, but this is the real kind of serious romance episode, and I guess this is where those two characters come together, even if not in reality for the first time. So what did you think of Human Error?
I like this episode. I like watching this because I like seeing Seven expand her programming. I don't think that this would have turned into a Hollow Pursuits kind of thing where she's addicted to holo programming or anything. I think she's just not comfortable with people, but she's trying to make herself more comfortable with people by running this program. I think it's really interesting that she has this relationship with Chakotay, and she says in here he's seen the most suitable candidate. And to me, it, you know, I'll talk about it later on because I am on the next block that finishes this up. But when Chakotay and Seven are dating in Endgame, it's jarring because you're like, oh, was that a thing? I didn't realize. But you go back to this, and it's not really a thing because it's all holographic. And that is very similar to Worf and Troy, where they had parallels, and it's like, oh, in a parallel dimension they're together. Oh, all of a sudden, in All Good Things, they are a couple. And so it's kind of weird when you put them together, but I guess I can kind of see where they were going with it. I don't mind it at all. I think it's really interesting watching her and wanting to become more, and her realizing like look, I want more than what I have right now. And it's like, well, why doesn't she have quarters? Why couldn't they give her quarters with a regeneration alcove? Why did she have to be in this cargo bay the whole time? So I like watching that, and I like watching her growth in the episode.
Yeah. And there's a kind of sadness to it as well, because there is this sense that she does, by this point, you know, she's not the character who joined the show a few years before, who was quite standoffish and didn't want to be part of it. She wants to be making speeches and making small talk and doing romances. So she wants to be a kind of normal, I suppose, human member of the crew, but at the same time, she's not quite managing it. You know, she misses the actual baby shower because she's in the holodeck, you know, living out a fantasy kind of social life. I mean, the only thing I wonder, though, is you mentioned she says Chakotay is the obvious choice or the most suitable candidate. Well, she didn't think that before, did she, when she was doing this kind of dating program?
Right.
Obviously had ruled him out then. I mean, I just don't know. I don't really buy that relationship. I certainly don't buy it in Endgame. I don't mind it here because it's not really Chakotay.
Right.
So I guess it's believable as sort of her fantasy. But I don't know, it's a bit strange, isn't it? And, you know, of course, there's that story. I'm sure you've heard this story that, you know, that romance between the two of them came about because Robert Beltran dared Brannon Braga to write in a kiss for them because Brannon Braga was dating Jerry Ryan at the time. And I think he, you know, I don't know, presumably it was a kind of blokey dare, I think, by the sounds of it. Which I guess is just, you know, maybe it doesn't affect this story because I think it does kind of work here, but it's hard not to take this in the context of Endgame and all the problems that relationship has, you know, knowing as we do where that goes, and also the fact that there's nothing in between. I mean, because it does completely come out of the blue when it turns out to be a real thing. I mean, there's an episode, you know, in between this and Endgame where the two of them are stranded on a planet together, and I don't think there's any suggestion of romance there in a situation where you would think if anything is going to engender that, you know, they're trapped on this planet together, that's going to be the time, but they sort of didn't make the most of it. So I suppose it's one of those kind of, it's the old story of the kind of, you know, failure of Voyager to cope with continuity in any meaningful way, and really, you know, it's just jumping back and forth all over the place. The other thing that I did wonder about this story is how would Chakotay feel if he knew about this? Because, you know, we've seen Geordi falling in love with the hologram, and Leah Brahms was not happy about it. We've seen that guy who was trying to get a Kira hologram because he wanted to have some kind of, you know, kinky Hollow program with her. I mean, previously when we've seen that, we've seen Barkley obviously in Hollow Pursuits. There's it's a kind of sleazy thing. But then I suppose and is the difference here that it's a woman doing it rather than a man? Is it because it's a genuine romantic relationship rather than just a kind of well, I suppose with Geordie it was more of a romantic relationship, I suppose. Why is it that this is different? Why is there no sense that maybe this is a bit questionable, really, what Seven is doing? Because I don't feel that is addressed. And also, why, unlike all those other people, why does she not get caught? Because whenever we have these other stories, the woman finds out, and Geordie or Barkley or whoever it is, it finds themselves in this. And in fact, the Doctor, we had the same thing with Tinker Tenor. The Doctor has these fantasies about the female member of the crew, gets to find out, and he's sort of humiliated. It's sort of interesting they flip that on its head and just don't go in that very well-worn direction.
Right, maybe because it is well-worn. I think that after the fact, Chakotay's like, what are you doing with a hologram of me? The real man's right here, baby. That's what I think. And then that's why we get the relationship.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Anywho. Well, I think that's about all I got. You got anything else?
No, I don't think so. I was interesting to see they still use reusable nappies in the 24th century. That was special Starfleet issue nappies. But no, so fine. Well, we'll leave that here, and as you say, you can come back to the vexed question of Chakotay and Seven on a later episode From There to Here. So, Brandon, if anyone wants to get in touch with you or find out more about what you're doing, how can they do that?
You can find me here on the network with new episodes of Melodic Treks, which is all about the music of Star Trek. As well, I've been on several recent episodes of Warp 5. And I want to put a special plug out for episode 97. If you haven't heard it, go back. It was a special interview that we did with Eric Pierpoint, who's been on every single Star Trek series after the original, for one episode at least, and then he played Agent Harris, the Section 31 agent. We had a great interview with him, and stay tuned for episode 100 on January 6th, because we've got another real special interview coming up for episode 100. You can find me on Twitter at Mutala, and you can find me every once in a while in the Babel Conference. And Duncan, when you're not running fake holodeck programs where you're falling in love with Chakotay, where can people find you?
Oh, well, that takes up so much of my time, you probably won't find me. But, if you want to give it a go, I'm on Twitter at Barrett's Books, or you can find me in the Babel Conference.
Right on. And we know you'd rather spend time with us, but everybody, go back to your families. Go open up some presents, have some eggnog, and Merry Christmas, everybody. And for those that don't celebrate Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.